Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another photo mishmash. This one being broadcast live August 30th, 2017. Thank you for joining me live. Those of you who are in the chat room, always love to chit-chat with you, answer your questions like Caleb, am I ever going to put out the GH5 files? Yes, I will. I've got quite the backlog of files to work on right now. Besides talking and chatting with you all, this is the show where I share kind of the week's photo news. We talk about some interesting items in a little bit more in depth. I lean into the microphone and say photos from space, and we usually talk about a picture from or of or around or near space. The black stuff with starriness, not like just the space around my head. And answer your questions, critique your photos, pick our Instagram highlights for the weekly challenge, which is coming up on finishing up another year. We've been working on Roy's fantastic with your all submissions over the last about a year ago, thoughts. And what else do we do? I think that's about it. So without further ado, let's get started. How do you spell that? Is that A-D-E-A-U? Or is it just A? No, I don't know. So first off, we start the show with the week in review. What have we been doing here at PhotoRec.tv that you might have missed? Well, first up, last week I had just gotten back from last week I had just gotten back from Joshua Tree National Park and visiting my brother. And we were leaving the following day for Olympic National Park. So Caleb, that is why I'm a little bit behind on post-processing a lot of those star photos from Joshua Tree, because we left almost immediately and went on another trip. I will be going through those. I have some really good time lapses. I really wish I need to nail down my video editing to Instagram workflow, because it's overly complicated and takes me too long right now. So once I nail that down, but why I say that is because I have lots of time lapses from the GH5 of the night sky moving, which I'm really excited to share with you all. Many of those can also be turned into star trails. It's kind of cool. You can do one or the other. I think, I think I'm a little over star trails for a while. I think I've star trailed myself out. I still like to do them. I think in certain places where you have some really cool foreground opportunity, they're fun. But I really want to focus more on some really nice Milky Way shots, like the Olympics that we just did, and just some nice star shots in general, and time lapses of the moving Milky Way. So that all happened last week, but I did get one video out right before we left, and that is about the Nikon D850, which was announced midnight after this show last week. And I'll say this, we'll touch on a few things. You've probably watched my video. If not, go watch it. It's like 5 minutes long. Boom, boom, boom. I'm quick and focused in that video. Unlike this show, where I'm very slow and unfocused. But if I was a Nikon shooter, that camera would make me very happy. That camera looks so good that I thought, wow, do I want to carry around a big camera again? If I do, man, that would be the camera. It is a bit of jack of all trades, and it has some really nice features that they've put in there that we haven't seen in DSLRs in the past, like focus peaking, the electronic shutter, silent electronic shutter at a lower resolution, but for long time lapses. That's pretty nice as well. It certainly, I don't think, is a perfect camera. It's going to have some drawbacks. One, of course, is price. The other, of course, is size. And, I say it's a jack of all trades, but if I was very serious about video, I don't think it's a great buy still. The GH5 is still, in my opinion, a little bit better. But overall, really a very nice camera with very little to complain about unless you're really picky. Roger, has it blown away Canon completely? Oh, I don't know if there's an echo. I hope I have my sound panels up. Hopefully there's not too much of an echo. Roger M. Roger Hunt asks, has it blown away Canon completely? Well, I mean, Canon continues to rest on a pile of beautiful lenses. I picture right now in my mind Canon as Smog and The Hobbit, and that gold is all of those lovely Canon lenses. Nikon's got some very nice lenses, but man, Canon still has some lenses that don't have a parallel out there. And that is a strength. And the 5D Mark IV is a very good camera, but I think when we put these two side by side, for many people, the Nikon D850, we take the lenses out of the equation. We just kind of compare these two on their specs. And in real world, the Nikon D850 is a more full-featured camera that is going to perform a lot better. That switch to the backside illuminated sensor, that's a huge deal. Not only does it allow better low-light performance, the early reports I'm seeing is significant improvement over low light performance, and the D810 already had good low light performance, really good, competitive with current Canon cameras. And now here's the new one that has really taken it at least a full stop better, plus faster readout. One of the things that I'm really jealous about in the Nikon D850, we'll go through a little list in a minute, but one of the things I'm really jealous about is the fact that you can choose large, medium, or small RAW. I can't do that in my Sony. I don't always want or need to shoot at 42 megapixels. And so I would really like to be able to shoot at smaller, medium, smaller RAWs, and you can do that with a Nikon. Oh, also the battery life, 1,800 shots. Nikon already had class-leading battery life, and now they've added, you know, just enhance their algorithms. Maybe it's that backside illuminated sensor with a faster write speed, less energy needed. I don't know, but that's good. Really, really impressive. So, well, I'll be talking more about that. I'll get my hands on one as soon as possible and be sharing more information, but it really does look like a nice camera. Other personal news, Rose has officially finished the adoption paperwork for Thomas, her little boy. And so she posted in the group some adorable little baby pictures. So Rose, we look forward to seeing lots more about that. Congratulations. And, you know, I just want to say for a moment, you all are family, and we know that Jos's wife, Helene, passed away this week. And it's very sad. But if you didn't see my comment within that group, this has been a long and very difficult time for Jos. And his attitude and his friendliness during all of this has honestly been inspirational. And if I ever am in a situation like this, I hope I can handle it with half the grace and positive attitude that he did. And I think you all join me in just wishing he and his family happy heart healing. That doesn't sound too cheesy, as they move forward. It's a very sad thing. You know, I lost my dad 4 years ago now, and probably not a day goes by that I don't think about that and miss him. And so it's tough, but I'm glad that we could be there. I'm glad that, you know, we all got together maybe it was a month or two ago now, and just sent some flowers and chocolates, and you know, you all contributed so much to make that happen. And it's just such a small thing, but it was just nice for us all to be able to do that. And so thank you. Thank you for everybody who posted on there your well wishes and thoughts. I appreciate it, and I know Jos appreciates it as well. So Jamie, she had been ill for quite some time. Yeah. Okay. Moving to the Shutterstock update is a little incongruous there, but this is that part where I'm doing that experiment of saying how rich I'm not getting by selling stock photography. I'm using Shutterstock, and I have now, since 2 episodes ago, added the Adobe stock site as well. And, you know, I've been kind of banging along, doing all right, and I seem to have hit a wall. So this is the month of August. Total earnings are at 142.76. So I think since we last talked, we last talked like on the 23rd, I've made exactly 29 cents. Woo-wee. I had been, look at this, early in the month, almost a sale a day, almost. And then it really has just kind of petered off. It'll be really interesting. We talked briefly about this last week. You know, I wonder how much time of year plays in to people looking for certain images and certain types of images. And a couple weeks back, I went over, Shutterstock had released a blog post of what they think people would be looking for in the near future. The amount of data these folks must have is probably really, really impressive. If I go to Adobe stock, and my earnings there so far are a whopping $0. And uploaded, here's my portfolio. Here's what's sitting here, many of the same images. In fact, I think it's all of the same images. And I've made no sales so far. Now, this is only 2 weeks in, and I don't have my owl, which has been the big moneymaker on Shutterstock. So I need to get that over here and see how that affects this. But as I said last week, Adobe rejected far, far more than Shutterstock ever has. I will say I just released, let's see where I can pull that up, or I just submitted a few days ago the new starry night picture from the beach, this one. And it was rejected by Shutterstock. It says it's too noisy, which, can we zoom in more? I don't think I can zoom in more for you all here. Maybe it remind me and I can show you in the library. But yeah, it's a bit noisy. It's 2500 ISO, but it's a nighttime shot, and at normal viewing sizes, I think it's quite good. So I might try to, as Adi has said, who has actually got, I think, the most experience out of all of us. She's been doing Shutterstock for several years now. Most of the time she gets those rejected, she just submits them right away again, and they go through. So I might try to submit this again. Maybe if it gets rejected again, I'll apply a little bit more noise reduction. I don't like quite how soft it gets, though. When you add that noise, it starts to eat some of those stars as well. So we'll see. That starry night shot, that one wasn't, but many of my other shots were shot with a Sigma 14. Which we've been talking about off and on the show. And I don't have anything bad to say about this lens other than it costs you a lot and it's heavy. But if you want a fantastic night or super wide, ultra wide landscape lens, this is looking pretty good. Pretty good. Roger, you can't believe no one's purchased the Kia yet. Well, yeah, I have it. Do I have that Kia on Shutterstock? I can't remember. Let me look at my portfolio real quick. I just click portfolio, and nope, nothing happens. I don't know how to see my portfolio now that I've catalog manager. Here it goes. I think I have it here as well. Yes, I do. Has it sold at all? I don't think there's a way to tell if it's sold at all without going in anywhere. You know, he's just in a parking lot. It's not very exciting. That is kind of their natural habitat these days, it seems like, but it's not very exciting. And I also did a flying owl that is cut out, and no one has bought that one yet either. I thought that might really work well, especially since how well the other owl that had been isolated from its background sold, but apparently not. So, and Roy is doing the same experiment, and Roy is currently sitting at $1.25. I see in in the chat, Caleb, you're sitting at 252. Jay, I'm just going to call you Jay. You're sitting at $6.88. You've been trying it for a while, but it does grow slow. So yeah, keep trying. Maybe you'll hit some post that you'll get an image up there that will really appeal to multiple people, and it'll download a bunch, or maybe you'll be lucky enough to get one or two of those $50 sales that I got. So, and then, hey, you know, that's a nice SD card or a nice circular polarizer or something. So it certainly, I don't think, hurts to put your images up here. And as Caroline has said, and I think Caleb too, in some ways, even as rude as the feedback seems sometimes, or as maybe arbitrary as it seems, it is this kind of independent third-party eyeballs on your images, judging them in a way, fairly or unfairly. It's kind of an interesting feedback of how somebody who spends a lot of time looking at a lot of images feels about your images. So it might inspire you to do more, might inspire you to give up and say, I'm fine. Just posted my noisy star photos to Instagram. I don't need Shutterstock, your validation, or your 25 cents per image. So, okay. I think that's everything. I did mention that we were in the Olympic National Park this past weekend. That was an absolutely fantastic trip. Many of you know that Chris and I had, or Maud, as you know her in the chat room, had scouted a few weeks earlier. I think there was a discussion item that we didn't talk about last week, but it just makes it so clear to me that having more preparation is always better. Knowing where a place is going to be, especially if there's tides are a factor, or sun is a factor, you know, what time, what will it look like at certain times of day. It just makes a huge difference in your preparedness for being able to, well, one, if you're teaching people, be like, okay, we're going to set up here and watch that sun's going to go right there between those cracks if you're hanging out here, and watch out for the reflections. But if you're trying to get your own good shot, I mean, showing up at the moment stuff is happening and expecting to get a really great shot without any prior knowledge of how things are going to line up or how things are going to look. Or the best example is Chris Burkhart's, you know, the eclipse photo. I mean, it's just more preparation is always better, is what I'm trying to say there. So that was a great trip. It was a lot of fun because kind of the Olympics feels a little bit like my backyard now. But also realized on the way back from the northwesternmost point in the park, it's actually not in the park, it's out of the park, but just how far it really is. And this is why I don't go every weekend. It was like a 4.5 hour drive back. Is that long? Maybe 4 hours. So, but we got to ride the ferry, which is always fun. Okay. Hi, Trilina. Hi, Laurie. Let's move into the week's news. First up, I just gushed about it a bunch. This is partly why. Yes, because I gushed about it. The Nikon is announcing or letting you all know it's sorry, but if you put your pre-orders in, you're not necessarily going to get it the day they start shipping. They're already have sold out of their initial batch. So this is always, it's a little bit of a game. We don't know how much the companies, this is something Apple has done for a while, where they probably could create enough to satisfy that early demand if they really put a lot of effort and energies into it. But that doesn't make the news, and that's not as exciting as saying, oh my God, you guys want our stuff so bad, we can't make it fast enough for you. I'm sorry, some of you aren't going to be able to get it quick, get your orders in now if you're even thinking about it. It's a little bit of marketing. I do think Nikon's not really playing that game to any great degree. I think they do have limited resources to put towards a camera like this. So, but man, it would be nice to see numbers. And nice to see how this camera is selling compared to some other ones. You know, you can go to B&H and see best selling. That list updates fairly frequently though. So the Nikon quickly rises to the top because over the last week, many people have been putting in their pre-orders. So yeah, if you want that camera anytime soon, go ahead and pre-order it now. Please make sure you use my link. Thank you. Next news story. Humans of New York to be made into a Facebook TV show. So this is neat for a couple of reasons. Humans of New York was those, where did he originally publish them? On Facebook? On Instagram? I feel like Humans of New York has been around longer than Instagram has been popular, but I could be wrong about that. Well, Petapixel article here says the photography blog. So let me share this screen here. The Humans of New York is this blog, if you don't know, if you've kind of been living under a rock, where Brandon has been interviewing people on the street of New York, taking a nice portrait of them usually, and just putting a little bit of information about the person. Sometimes it's a little bit more than a little bit, and it's almost always really interesting. These people many times bare their souls to him and then to us. And to put this picture with this kind of context is always very interesting. Well, they're going to take it to the next level. And Facebook has recently announced Facebook Watch. it's basically going to be a YouTube competitor. I'm very interested to see how this does, but there's going to be advertising, and creators like myself are going to be able to have shows on here and earn part of the percentage of the stuff as well. I was actually interviewed a couple of weeks ago, not like an interview to put on TV, but an interview to get a sense of how I use YouTube by somebody working for Facebook. He wasn't allowed to say that, but now I know for sure based on this Facebook Watch. And so it was really interesting. He was asking about my happiness as a creator, my happiness of the kind of the commission and all the back end, and how YouTube could be better. And so it's just interesting. So this is one of the early shows that's going to be on Facebook Watch. I'm impressed with Brandon because look at this. He's been filming content for the past 4 years with the help of cinematographer Michael Crommett. So I really respect someone to have enough forward thinking to say, all right, right now I've got these pictures and I've got this nice text. It's doing really well. What's the next thing? Video. And you know, you might say, oh, of course. But man, I don't know what the next thing is for me. I'm just trying to go day to day with this. But so they've amassed over 1,200 interviews, what they're going to be turning into a television show. You can watch the trailer, but it's if you go to the Humans of New York Facebook page, which is liked by 18 million people, you can see the first whole episode just sitting right here on that page. It's pretty cool. I think Facebook will eventually have a whole kind of watch section. I think the app might have it soon. It might be rolling out very soon, and shows like this would show up. So this is interesting. I don't know how much of a photography side of things it's going to have. I think it's going to be more an interview, but I'll certainly be curious to watch some of them. Is it something you all are interested in as well? Oh, Trelina thinks it started on MySpace. Ooh, that was a while ago. That certainly sounds possible, plausible. I think my brother's still on MySpace. Maybe I should ask him. Okay, next. Canon. This is a nice episode because we get to talk about Nikon and Canon. Canon has announced four lenses, a flash, and a camera. That was me yawning because it's so boring. All right, the lenses are not boring. Let's talk briefly about these, and let me ask you all if you're interested. We've got the headline lens that I think will, without a doubt, will sell more than anything else they've announced is the 85mm f1.4 LIS. So, you know, I'm a huge fan of the Sigma 85 f1.4. I picked it for many people as a much better value over the Canon 85 f1.2. Now I'm going to be curious to see how this matches up. It is an L lens. It does have IS as well, which is nice. You know, I don't feel super strongly about needing IS in lenses like this, but if you're shooting video, it certainly is a nice option. I'm sure it's going to be extremely sharp and go up against very well against the Sigma f1.4, I think. If I had to guess, I would probably put the Sigma still a little bit sharper, but I think they're going to be very, very close. It is, what's the price? I feel like it's extremely expensive still, more expensive than the Sigma, but of course it does have image stabilization in it. So if you need that, then that's a good lens. I don't actually know. I think MySpace is still a thing. I don't know if my brother, he knew for the longest time he had a MySpace. I was like, dude, Facebook is around. Why don't you get on Facebook? He's like, I don't want to do Facebook. People will find me. Who are you running from? He's got a bad past, that brother of mine. All right, and then from that lens, we've got 3 tilt shift lenses. 3! What? Why? I don't know. For those who don't know, tilt shift lenses allow you to change the plane of focus from being perpendicular out there somewhere in space to your lens to I don't want to say parallel to your lens, but at an angle. What's the best way to describe that? I'm not totally sure. I've talked about it before. The first time I really talked about it was on one of the Iceland vlogs from my first trip to Iceland, because Steve Skurrich brought along his tilt shift that he used for real estate photography, and I used it in a couple different places. They are popular with architectural and interior photographers because they allow you to make sure you get that plane of focus and well, it's more of the shifting than the tilting, but it allows you to keep straight lines very straight and also to keep your depth of field exactly where you want it to be. They also have kind of a niche among wedding and portrait photographers because you can create some interesting effects by shifting that plane of focus off into the distance. And I think what they're saying here is, and I could be wrong, I'm not a macro photography expert, but I mean, they do have some use in macro photography as well, because again, when your depth of field is very narrow, it's nice to be able to shift it to make sure it's hitting what you want. So let's say you imagine you're photographing an ant and you're not quite on eye level, but pointing down at it a little bit more. You can shift that focus so that the depth of field isn't going into the, floor below the ant, but is going back along the ant's body. Yeah, I agree, Trillian. It's neat, but it seems kind of niche. It's not something I've seen a ton of people using. I think it comes in and out of style to some degree. I haven't seen it recently in the wedding photography business being talked about a whole lot, but I'm also not as in the wedding photography business as I used to be. So it could be just as popular and I'm not as aware of it. But we've got the 50 f2.8. We've got a 90 f2.8. Again, it's macro, and a 135 f4. So I would love to see somebody with more knowledge talking about these. I cannot expect that any one of them will sell at a massive amount. These feel pretty niche, even for architecture and landscape photographer, or architecture and interior landscape, especially since the 50, 90, especially because they're at very high focal lengths. So you're not going to be using these in interiors. Real estate photographers are not going to be using these inside at all. They're way too long a focal length. So I don't know. That's all I got to say about them. Oh, and then we've got the macro twin light, which is really nice, and another Canon mirrorless. This is working off the 24 megapixels APS-C CMOS sensor. So this is the same thing that we currently have in what, the 80D Digic 7 processor, same in the 80D, 3-inch tilting touchscreen. It'll flip all the way up selfie style. Do they have a picture of that? No. So it'll flip up in, at the top of the camera for selfie style. It does do 1080 at 60, no 4K, of course. And it has the dual pixel CMOS AF, which means very smooth, very capable, and quite fast autofocus. An ISO range 100 to 6400, expandable to 25,600. Single SD card slot, 10 ounces. So this is not a very exciting camera. No viewfinder, no way to add a viewfinder or add a more serious flash. This is really kind of a small step up from a point and shoot camera. Does allow interchangeable lenses, of course, using the EFM mount that we've got right here. It's just not very exciting. It would be exciting if maybe they put 4K in there so that people could start to say, hey, Canon's approaching video a little bit more seriously, but they're not doing that. So it's definitely not a bad camera, and it's quite affordable. It's $699 or $649, I think is the price. Let's go to B&H for a second and see if we can find the new tilt shifts in that lens as well. I think just announced. Oh yeah, look, we can click on pre-order here. So here we go. Okay, yeah, so the 85 is $1,600. The Sigma, if I remember correctly, is $1,200 or $1,300. Again, the Sigma doesn't have IS. The 50 is a $2,100, $2,200. The rest are all $2,200. So the 50, the 90, that macro, that twin light is $1,000. Ooh-wee. Oh, and look, these aren't coming until December 1st. November 17th for the 85. That's a bit of a wait. The 135 is $2,200. And here it is, Canon EOS M100 with the 15 to 45 and the 55 to 200. Again, these are the M mount lenses, EFM. $949. Just the kit lens itself, $599. I mean, not a bad price, but at that price, there are other things I think that are more exciting, like the A6000, which is an older camera, but more exciting. And if you wanted to use Canon on the A6000, you could certainly do that with an adapter, just like you have to get if you want to use bigger Canon questions. So, yeah, Roger, I think it is a pointless new camera. I don't think it's going to sell very well. And then their lens hoods. Look how much these lens hoods are, 50 bucks. Spare or replacement item. Yeah, I think all those lenses come with this, so only if you break yours. All right, so that's that stuff. What else news-wise we talk about? Instagram adds a much-wanted new feature. I don't know how much wanted this is. So Instagram has added the ability to, a while ago, put up multiple images, right? How many of you use that? I have used it once in the last month, maybe. I would like to use it more, but I just keep kind of forgetting about it or thinking about good ways to use it. I would love, I keep meaning to put up like a before and after edited image to really show people because there's a big difference in a lot of these pictures. Like that star, my star photo with the reflections on the beach. It was not very exciting looking straight out of the camera. It was pretty dark and dingy. But up until now, those extra images you added had to be square, like old school style Instagram square. Now they can be portraits or landscape or vertical orientation, we should say. Vertical or horizontal orientation. I'm curious how this affects my, and I'm going to say I came up with it first. I didn't see anybody else talking about it before me. And that is the fact that you can put up multiple images that is a panorama and be able to swipe through seamlessly and see all of them as a panorama. I don't know how it affects that. Can we have much longer panoramas now because of that? Roy says it's useful to him because he keeps adding galleries to the blog. So. Oh, Caroline, you've heard that the M100 is very small. Oh, the SL2 is very small and light. Yes, it is. And I think in a lot of ways that is a better buy than the Canon mirrorless because that SL2 does have a fully articulating screen, doesn't it? Which is pretty sweet. It's very small, and you don't have to have an adapter to use Canon glass or the Canon EFS and EF mounts. Glass, I should specify. So I like the SL2. I think it's a decent option if you want Canon. Any other? One thing I wanted to hit on, there's a bunch in the not discussed. One of them is the 17 new tricks of the Nikon D850 and how they'll help. I'm just going to list a couple of these out because I think they're interesting, and I didn't talk about them in my video. Unified layout with the D5. This is great for a lot of serious wedding photographers who might be using a D5 on one hip and the D850 on the other. You know, Steve Holmes, who I had on the show once many months ago, and I used to shoot with weddings from time to time. He has a D5, and now he'll have a D850, and going back and forth between the two at weddings will be seamless to him, and I'm sure that will be very appreciated. Battery life, I mentioned. Focus stacking, so that's another new feature of the D850. It's something that I have in my GH5, and we've seen in some other cameras as well. It will take multiple pictures at multiple focus points and then stack them. Not in camera. You have to have third-party software, or I think Nikon's going to be bundling software with it that will handle that. Honestly, that seems gimmicky. But the focus peaking, so this is the first time to my knowledge we've got a DSLR that has focus peaking in it. That means that as you manually focus, there'll be little colored dots surrounding those things that are in focus. I have this on my GH5. I also have it on my Sony, and it is such a nice visual feedback of where my focus plane is, and it works really well at night for stars. GH5 gets a little too noisy, but on my Sony, brighter stars show up and I can focus on them, and I have a lot less trial and error than if I have a camera where I'm manually focused, taking a picture, checking to see if it's in focus, and repeating that process. So having focus peaking is really nice. However, it is not available in video when shooting 4K. So that's a little bit of a bummer. It's not a stabilized sensor, but they are offering electronic stabilization at resolutions below 4K. Excuse me. Silent shooting, which I mentioned. This is the first time for it. Up to 6 frames per second at just 8 megapixels. But 8 megapixels is enough for some of your work. And again, for that long time lapse running, having silent shutter, there is no shutter. It's basically turning the sensor on and off, is really nice. So again, I really like having that ability in my GH5. I don't feel like I'm wearing out the shutter doing really long time lapses. And also it uses less battery life. So that 1800 images, that's not for shooting an interval. That's like normal use of the camera, looking at the screen and stuff like that. So if you set this camera up for time lapse with one battery, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to assume that you're going to get much better battery life when shooting a time lapse with silent shooting turned on. If you take the time to turn off the image review, which I usually do anyway, you should be able to get a couple of thousand images at least running an interval with a D850. Roy mentioned this, that they have also announced a negative adapter that turns the D850 basically into a film scanner. You can take pictures of the negative, and within camera, it will develop them. It's smart enough to say, or you put it on negative mode, I don't know, some mode in the menu, and it will take a negative and turn it into a positive. Better multiple exposure, it's going to save the individual shots. And better white balance setting, raw batch processing, I'm not sure how much we use. Better in-camera HDR. The fine-tune AF is also very nice. That is where, and they've been doing this for a while. The D5 did it. And Steve and I played with it actually at one of the last weddings we shot together. That's Steve Holmes again. You put on a lens that you want. It's kind of like Focal built in, which is that software that will dial in your focus and make sure any micro focus adjustments that need to be made are made. It uses live view, and then it uses its regular focus. It kind of compares the two in camera and says, okay, I need to adjust this better, because live view focus is always extremely accurate, but a little bit slow. That is one downside to the Nikon D850 still. It's using that older contrast detection in live view. It's not great for video. It's not great for fast well, it's not great for fast focus in live view, but it's good enough. Pinpoint AF, I hadn't heard this one. You can select the focus point 1/4 the size of a typical autofocus point. The viewfinder magnification is at 0.75x. That means when you look through this viewfinder, it is going to be such a big, beautiful, bright view that it's kind of like setting the standard now. In-camera image cropping with viewfinder masking. So if you say, I want a 1-to-1 image because you want to shoot for old school Instagram, even though even in the galleries now you can have other images, as I just said, it will outline those crop lines in your viewfinder. This is, I think, what somebody thought. Remember, we heard a rumor that the D850 was going to give us a hybrid viewfinder that was going to be optical and digital both. And I think it's got some helpful visualizations in that viewfinder, but it is still just an optical. And we got flicker reduction in artificial light sources. That's been around for a while. So some pretty sweet features that are in there that I just think really make this camera nice. And we got rumors of the OME 10 Mark III. And Panasonic has issued a GH5 firmware update with a host of unexpected extras. I actually haven't looked at this. More responsive autofocus. USB tethered shooting, additional stabilization mode for steady or handheld video. Ooh, I'm already impressed with it. Improvements to 6K and 4K photo modes, additional wireless function. Ooh, what does that mean? Bug fixes and minor tweaks. But the improvements to the 6K and 4K and the 400 megabyte per second all-eye compression options in 4K, they are recommending now the faster SD cards because you may run into some pauses in dropped recording with those. Again, I just continue to be very impressed with the quality coming out of the GH5. So, Roger, you say you don't use the gallery because people keep just scrolling down and not really scrolling sideways. I agree. I agree. Okay. What else? Oh, it's time for photo. Wait, hold on. Let's do this the new way. He just hangs out there all week long, just waiting for his cameo. Photos from space. This would be great if I had something queued up now. All right, Hurricane Harvey. Let's talk about this a little bit. Oh, see, I thought it was going to be interesting and give us some scale. Hurricane Harvey's, there's an image. Oh, you can't see. It's hardly worth sharing. I should look at these before I start to talk to you all. Here is Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey is still ravaging southeast Texas 5 days later. A friend of mine posted, he's actually another digital camera reviewer, Kishore, really nice guy. I can't remember who he writes for right now, but you know, he posted the other day, and I think this is very interesting. I was having the same thought. I mean, here we are supposed to be one of the best, most advanced countries in the world, and it doesn't matter how advanced you are when Mother Nature decides to F you and give you the big finger with a hurricane like this. There's really not a whole lot you can do about it. And then the rescue operations afterwards, I mean, it's a bit of a mess. And I feel terrible for anybody there who's lost, of course, their life, but property. And it's just, I don't know, I'm not being very articulate here. But it's just tough. And I think a lot of times we look at these third world countries and we're like, oh my God, look at that mess. God, you know, what if that happened here? We'd be, you know, it'd be cleaned up by now. And really the truth is that's not really true when storms like this are as bad as they are. So let's see. Okay, so back here, let's go to this one. Roy says this one is neat. The story behind the viral photo of a rock climber in front of the eclipse. This is from Resource Mag Online. I don't want them to send stuff. This is, so these guys were not with Chris Burkhardt and Scene. And I think these guys' shot is better than the Chris Burkhardt one where the guy was on the tightrope, or what do you call that? That's these days slack line. And I mean, it is just an epic shot. How long is this video about it? 4 minutes. Presented by Columbia. Oh, one of my friends. Actually, I have 2 friends that work for Columbia. That's right. They send us this too. Just it's a behind the scenes of how they captured this, and you can see the Chris Burkhardt stuff going on down here. But wow, man, just so cool. So I would go watch that. Photos about space was what that was. Okay, I'm gonna go watch it later. Now we're in that part of the show where we talk about the Instagram highlights, the standouts for community. This is a community. You all are a wonderful, wonderful community. Jamie gives her thumbs up to the Columbia and says it's good. You should watch it. And there's a spider has built a web on there. All right, so it was a little quiet this week. I think many of you weren't quite sure how to approach the community, but those who did, you did a nice job. So let me share my screen and find the ones really? Are they in here? No, that's not right. Where are they? They're here. So there they are. Okay. And of course we can make these bigger. All right, first up, as a highlight, both Roy and I picked this is Rhapsodist Media. And I really like this shot. We've got focus is nailed here. It's a nice tight shot. And what it really appealed to me is kind of this over the shoulder shot. We see the crowd behind him. And I think if we didn't have the fact that we can see another person here and another person on the right, and the fact that he's facing away might make it feel a little bit awkward. But with this over-the-shoulder shot and framed between two other individuals, I really get the sense that he is completely surrounded by people. And if we look, the depth of field is really nice here. Focus is clearly on him, but there's enough going on in the background that we can see that people are enjoying themselves. And that's one of the things that Roy mentioned. So I love us too, Trelina. So I really like this. I think this is great. Another thing that I really like, out of all of these people watching, I only see one other person with a phone or looking at their phone. I don't want to make judgments about Americans, but I feel like in America there'd be so many more phones. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just feel like it. So just really think this is a neat kind of shot, and something happening in the community. Very nice. I like it. Next up, I chose Nadia's in the town of Salt, Jordan. And these two old men saw her walking by and said, "Hey, take our picture." Now, if I had to guess, I'd say is this gentleman here who looks like he's enjoying life just a little bit more. And so again, we've got great light on them. They're just out of that harsher light there, so really soft but still directional light. And just kind of a candid but fun look and pose. And I really thought this was a good one. Caroline, you were one of my highlight picks because I liked this, and I also liked what you wrote about kind of the whole beehive community in your caption as well. So there's from time to time, I've mentioned this, where an image is good, but then there's a thoughtful caption behind it that I think takes it to another level. And Caroline, I think you've done a really good job here. If I could offer one critique, it would be this dude over on the right. We don't need him. He's looking out of the frame so awkwardly, and he's cut off just a little bit. I would be fine with you cropping in right behind this young lady's shoes. I was going to say butt, but her shoes. So, and these people cut off over here are totally fine because they're looking into the frame. More cell phones, though. Look at this. These cell phone, cell phone, cell phone, cell phone, cell phone. He's showing her. He's like, look, I just took a picture. And she's like, that's not a very good picture. Okay. As I said, Roy picked Rhapsodist as well. And then Roy picked Terry Howard's. Let me see what you said about Terry's. Mini photographers count. Mini as in M-I-N-I. And it's a nice shot, even if you do want his lens. I agree. I would like his lens too, the 100 to 400 Canon. A very nice lens. David and Steve, I think both David and Steve, maybe just David had hit that 100 to 400 on the Olympic trip. He got such a good shot of a fisherman in the surf, the setting sun. I mean, epic level, like PPA winner shot. So, and then the final one that you picked, and this caught my eye too, is G.W. Bonnick's apartments in his community. Because community doesn't necessarily mean people. I really like the kind of colorful balconies, colorful pots up here. And I think this is a great shot. And that's what you said too. This week is not limited to people. You like the bright colors of the white, the balconies against the apartment buildings. So. Good. Okay. Nice. Thank you all to who submitted. What is next week? Next week, oh, it's back to me. Next week is shape. To shoot a shape or have the focus be on shapes. It's your choice. Play with shapes to your heart's content. I suggest black and white or two. Black and white or two, as killing color enhances shapes in your photos. Let's look forward to those shapes. If you wanted to, you could follow Rose's tutorial from way back around Valentine's Day about how to create those bouquet shapes in the background. Very easy to do and kind of fun if you've never tried that before. Or you could go find an interesting building that has a neat shape or some juxtaposition of different shapes. I'm looking forward. I look forward every week to seeing what you all create, and especially with the shapes. Okay. We got a couple of different discussion articles here. The the one that really that stood out to me, well, I just want to read the headline to you and then say I think it's a good idea. Why you might want to consider keeping a visual diary. And so in this article, they talk a little bit about, as photographers, we are artists, and we are constantly seeing colors and shapes and ideas, and having some concrete place to submit to kind of keep track of all of that is valuable. And I agree. It could be as simple as a digital, maybe as you come across Instagrams that really appeal to you for one way or another, for the framing or for the colors or for just the way it looks. Hit that little save button and you've kind of created this digital collection of images that appeal to you for different reasons. It would be really great if you could, in some way, when you save it, add yourself a little note. So you could keep a Google Doc or Google Keep where you do paste in the URLs with a little bit of note, or take a screenshot and then paste them in with a little bit of a note as well. Or you can keep something physical, like a spiral bound, where you make notes and paste in bits from magazines or sketches. All of that stuff I think is really nice and can kind of support your learning and education as you create images. But the one I want to talk about briefly is the jack of all trades versus tunnel vision photographers. This is an F-Stopper article. And I don't think there's anything amazing here in this article. I think this makes sense, but it's nice to kind of walk through and make sure that you are thinking about this from time to time. So the gist of this article is there really are two types of photographers out there, or if we want artists. There are those that kind of cover a little bit of everything. I put myself in that category to the most part. Though, as Roy and I were talking about, if you look at my Instagram, it is really mostly landscape with a little bit of travel mixed in. And then, of course, some portraits recently when I was testing portrait lenses. But really, it's kind of landscape. It's what I enjoy. These days, as I travel and teach, I find myself in these beautiful landscapes. And so that's what I'm taking a lot of. Whereas the jack of all trades photographer pursues a bit of everything. And if you look at Roy's, it's a little bit more mixed, maybe a little bit more product photography, a little bit more portrait, a little bit more of kind of journalistic in his hometown. And there's no, it says both have advantages and both have very clear weaknesses. The jack of all trades may be skilled in many areas, able to shoot decent, even great images across genres, but as they spread themselves across their different interests, can they ever achieve mastery of any single aspect? Whereas the one-track mind may master their genre, being able to create genuine masterpiece images, all while finding themselves helpless to shoot work outside of their expertise. I think helpless is a little bit of a strong word there. If you are a master photographer in one field, you are going to be able to, I think, know light and know what you should do in a variety of situations. It's very hard for me to imagine somebody who is a fantastic photographer in any one category feeling helpless in many others. Maybe some specific ones. But let me see what else is there. Every genre will be full of. Yeah, so that's really all that's in this article. And if you think about Instagram, and this is something we're going to talk about Instagram in a video coming up at some point, it's clear to me that people usually find you through the work you do most. And so when you continue to post that work, you get the best feedback. If you post work outside of that, people don't expect that from you, and oftentimes don't react as well to it, even if it's pretty good. My friend Nick is a great example. He has come the logistics manager of a lot of these McKay trips. He has he's got a great eye, and he's got a lot of travel shots, but his other work is mostly model and portraiture. And on that Instagram that he has for travel, his model and portraiture gets very little love because his work started mostly as the travel, and then every once in a while he'd put in the portrait picture, and it wouldn't get nearly as much love and probably wouldn't grow his channel because people that would come to him through that would see the travel stuff and say, I don't care about that. I really just want to see portraiture. This guy doesn't post consistently portraiture enough for me to stick around. So he's actually split his Instagram into two, one for that kind of travel and one for the specific portraiture stuff. That's something to think about. I mean, the example of my recent portraits, I think they did quite well because, well, I don't know. I mean, they were good pictures, I think. And so people responded fairly well to them. But if I started posting lots more portraits, and if they weren't all as strong as that one, then I think I would not see as much positive feedback and positive reinforcement there, because most people have found my work know about travel. Actually, most people have found my work through kind of the gear stuff. And so when I post the gear pictures, people really respond well to that. But so it's, you know, if you want to grow your Instagram, I think there is value in being consistent to the type of work that you do best. And it helps reinforce what you do best as well. So. Okay. Jack of all trades, master of none. Yep. Very true, Roger. I know that. And I wonder if that is Shakespeare. It certainly sounds like it could be. Sounds like throw the word doth in there, and you have this whole thing. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. How does I don't know if there's anything genius to the wrap up I can say about that statement, other than if you enjoy photography because you like capturing what you see around you, whatever that is, landscapes or portraits or walking down the street, then you should by all means do that. But if you want to be better in some area of photography, then that's what you should really focus on. I think that's not a genius statement. That's a pretty self-explanatory statement. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of practice to really kind of create consistently good images time and time again in any field, or to be good at anything. And so focusing, if that's what you want to do, is smart. I feel like we had an article that contradicted this a few weeks ago, and that was like, if you get in a rut, go try some other forms of photography, which, you know, I guess that's, you do you. That's what I would sum up this as. Okay. Caroline, you had opinions about the Canon SL2. You know, I briefly talked about this. Oh, we're in the Q&A now for the rest of you. You know, I think it's a nice camera. I think its value is quite good. If you don't mind that small size. You might say, well, of course I don't mind that small size. It's small enough that it doesn't feel good in some people's hands. But I think people with smaller hands would be perfectly happy with that camera. It does have a fully, I haven't shot with it yet. Of course, I've shot with that sensor. It does have a fully articulating screen now, doesn't it? I think so. Yes, yeah. And so the original one did not, which it's very nice. And it does 1080 at 60 frames per second too, and it's $549 for body only. I think that's quite good. No used ones on B&H at least yet. And again, that sensor, that's the same sensor that's in the 80D that I'm very happy with. I think that's a good sensor, and in some measurements is better than the 6D. Oh yeah, I was going to share some quick thoughts about the 6D as well. I don't know where it is. I thought it was in front of me, the Canon 6D. I guess it's not. But I do have in front of me is the Fuji X-T2, which I like, but man, I tell you what, I put this in the hands of beginners. I did this a couple of times over this past week, even accomplished photographers, and it is not intuitive at first. but the quality out of this, the responsiveness is all very nice. On the other hand, you put the 6D Mark II in people's hands, and it is very easy to use. It's very comfortable to work with, but it's not a great value. Oh yeah, I was gonna share with you. So I'm working on kind of my talking points for the Canon 6D, and I'm just going to share with you a couple of thoughts about this. First one is I'm going to start off by saying this camera offers no new features. It's not competitive on paper or in real-world tests against other similarly priced cameras, but I still might recommend it to you. And another line that I might say or start with is this camera will not keep you from making beautiful photos, but I'm not going to recommend it to you unless. That one's a little weird. That's weird. So, I mean, you know, the camera's capable of taking fantastic images, but it is not very competitive. It's not really competitive at all at that price point. But if you're firmly in the Canon world, you've got a lot of Canon lenses and you want full frame, you want better ISO performance than you would get with a crop like the 80D or the original 6D Mark II, or you want better focusing capabilities than the original 6D Mark II, then you might want to consider it. But if you're somebody who likes to edit your images, you like to take really beautiful landscape shots and edit those, it doesn't respond. The camera does not respond well to editing the raw files like cameras in the past, even. And current cameras blow it away. So, you know, it's not a whole lot of exciting stuff to talk about with the Canon 6D Mark II, other than it continues that lovely, easy to use Canon system. It fits all of those lovely Canon lenses. And what? I don't, you know, it's tough. I've got a friend who is thinking about ditching Canon and going with a Nikon D850. He's currently shooting with the 80D and is thinking about jumping ship, but says, you know, I keep hearing that Canon's got something killer coming right around the corner. I don't think so. Not anytime soon. They really seem to be completely clueless. For them to release this camera that is at this point, I don't know. 6D was a camera I recommended very frequently. It was, you know, even though its autofocus was a little slow, it was a good, decent value, full frame camera from Canon that performed well. But while the 6D Mark II performs well in a vacuum and against older cameras, against anything current on the market, including stuff like the Fuji X-T2, which is cheaper with lens, it's just not there. So, and it's not there in video. You know, if they'd made video kind of a stronger side of things as well. So I look extra cute today. That's very nice of you to say that, Trelina. Well, the 5D Mark IV was, all right, so Roger says, I thought the 5D Mark IV was the killer camera. You know, the 5D Mark IV was a nice evolution from the 5D Mark III with some new features, but honestly, I didn't ever call it a killer camera. It was just kind of nice. My review of it is, if you're a photographer looking to upgrade from the 5D Mark III, this offers probably enough to upgrade to. But it isn't like, oh, amazing, packed full of new and exciting features. It doesn't have, man, do you know how many times poor Steve Scourge now and David are like, man, I wish I had an articulating screen. Every time they see me get out there and get at different angles and flip this little screen out on all of these cameras, every camera sitting in front of me, because has an articulating screen. They're so nice, and they didn't put it in the 5D Mark V, and they're like, or 5D Mark IV, we can't weather seal it. Yeah, Nikon did. D850. Come on, man. So, you know, for landscape photographers, it's a pretty big bummer. But anyway, point being, 5D Mark IV is a nice camera, but it is not at the level of the 850. But if you're in the Canon world with a lot of Canon glass, it's good, and certainly good enough that people are going to continue to shoot with it. But the 6D Mark II just, I wish that there was something exciting in there. But what I think they worry about is cannibalizing sales from their 5D. If they made the 6D Mark II too exciting, then people wouldn't buy their 5D Mark IV. So, yeah. Okay. Oh, Angela, too much. Okay. And I think that was it for our Q&A and for my little rant. Did I say anything else about the 6D that I wanted to share with you? Well, it's that dynamic range. So if you don't post-process your images with the, if you're happy going out there, shooting a picture, getting a JPEG or shooting a RAW that you do just a tiny bit of editing to, then the 6D Mark II shouldn't bum you out too much. But I'm bummed if you're that kind of person and you say, well, I don't want to edit all my pictures. Man, make Lightroom edit for you on import. Edit one picture and then get a nice base preset and then apply that to all of your pictures on import. And again, the 6D Mark II is not going to respond as well as many other cameras that are cheaper and have more exciting features. No. Okay, let's critique a few photos. What do I need to do? I need to find the Hangouts window right here. I need to share my screen, share my entire screen. And first up, Caroline. Ooh. Caroline's got a wine glass that I think is at some party. I'm upset, Caroline, that I wasn't invited. I like this. It's definitely a little noisy, ISO 1600. I'm seeing a little bit of noise in the hands and a little bit more blue than I like. Okay, you submitted a D&G with some edits already. I like that. I'm going to try brightening this a little bit more. And I'm going to cool it. Well, I actually don't know. Part of this feels a little too warm and part of it feels a little too cool to me. Let's go warm for a minute and see where we end up. I just want the hand to look not so blue. That's my goal. I want it to look a little less blue and red. And we're not quite getting there. I just brought it way over. There we go. Yeah, see, that loses some of its excitement, but the hand looks better. It was just a pub, no party. Still didn't invite me to the pub. Let's bring it back a little bit. And then what I might do, and I mean, this is being pretty picky. I think this is a nice shot. I like kind of the casual angle of the wine glass. I like that. Here, can we see your original crop? Did you crop it at all? Oh, you did. Oh, I'm confused. Why, if I say turn the cropping on, if we hit enter, oh, hold on, fit. Sorry, we were zoomed in, weren't we? Okay. Okay. I kind of liked not seeing the top of the wine glass in that thing. It's one of those things where you hear a song first, maybe by a cover band, and then you hear the original and you're like, I like the cover better. I liked that original view that cropped the top of the glass. It's clear what it is from the rest of it. And it's this kind of tight, focused in on these lights down to this, the stem of the glass. I think that's really strong on its own. When we get more of it up here, let me see what I feel like this. I think that's fine too, but I do like the original. If we kept it here, I would, oops, sorry, I hit the backslash key. I would these are little things, but that gray right there, I'd get rid of that there. Maybe you could do, an easy way to get rid of it would be to do the post-crop vignette there. But let's go back to that original issue that I was talking about, and that's the hand color. So one of the things we might want to do is get our brush tool and literally paint. Let's just see if we can paint on here a little bit and see if we can get a little bit of this hand here to not look like this. It looks like space in a wine glass. Who said that? Trelina. I agree. It's cool. It's space. What's my flow? Oh, my flow is too low. Let me see. Oh, where I've painted. Okay. Now, all right, let's paint again. Now that my flow is a little bit higher. And it's the lights are making, I saw your comment, the lights are making the hand kind of giving it that blue color as well. Let's see if we brighten it a little bit. And let's see if we can counteract that red with a little green. It's getting a little funny, isn't it? Oh, our saturation is down. I'm struggling here. Might not be as important as I think it is. What if we go, yeah, see, we're too much blue and red there. Just want to offset that a little bit. Maybe we de-emphasize the hand and bring it back down into darkness. Yeah. Just, yeah. I am still with you. Just struggling here a little bit. Maybe I'm going to say it's not that important, but I'd like to see the hand color just feel a little bit more natural. See, this color and this, they're just so different. But other than that, I like it a lot. I'm curious for a second. I would also take out this little red here. Very small, but it's much brighter and more noticeable than the rest. I'm curious for a second. What happens if, oh, you have your vibrance up. What happens if we make this a black and white, bringing those down? I think that's a neat image as well. It does lose some of that excitement that those colors are speckled in there. So watch out for that. Your whites are all the way down. What happens when we let those come back up to normal? Yeah, I think that's fine. I really like, this is cool right through here. So I like it. Also, now that I've been cropped out for a while or zoomed out, I like the whole glass up there as well. So I do think that your original is better than that really tight shot. A little less emphasis on the hand when we're a little zoomed out as well. Nice. Ooh, from a colorful image to a very monochromatic one. I like this a lot. So is this a 16 by 9? It feels fairly wide. I don't know if it's quite 16 by 9. It is. Nope, it isn't. Go back to your original there. Rule of thirds, we've got the people positioned over here. I like that they're still within this space and they're not intersecting over here yet. They could be a tiny bit more to the right, but that's pretty minor. I would probably, oh, I actually just undid it, but I would probably bring this in just enough to get rid of that step there. Maybe here. So we're hiding that step edge and that other kind of flashing there. And we've come in even here as well and even here. So that to me makes that side just a little bit cleaner and stronger, but it's pretty minor. And overall, I think what appeals to me about this shot is you've got a lot of straight lines and leading lines, and they all feel very solid and thoughtful. Nothing is leaning at funny angles. So this is great. This looks very nice. Good. All right, next, Roger. All right, Roger, here's your final version. I saw your notes about this in the show. This is your processed version. And then here is the original right out of camera. Now, you said unedited raw, but you only gave me a JPEG. So our editing capabilities will be limited here. Let's come back here for a second. I think you've done a nice job. It does feel maybe a little bit pushed over edited right back in here. This detail back here feels a little funny. I also have that right there. I don't know how much I can do with it being a JPEG, but notice that back here in that it's pretty soft back there. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, my overall exposure seems, my histogram is kind of balanced across. I'll just bring down exposure a tiny bit. Contrast, I almost always just bump up right away. Highlights, I see those bright areas back there, so I'm going to bring them down. And again, we got a JPEG, so it really starts to get gray back there. But let's pretend this is raw. That gives me a little bit more latitude. Bring those down. Shadows, I'm going to bring up a good bit. This foreground information area here, I want to be able to see this. So I'm going to keep bringing that up a little bit. Whites, my goal is always to have just kissing the pure white. So I'm going to bring this up, watching that histogram until it touches the right-hand wall. And you can hit the J key too, of course, remember, and see any red showing up when it starts to clip. There's a little bit to the right of our couple standing there. So I'm going to take that away. You can also hold down the Alt key as you drag on here, and it will show that as well. Blacks, we're really close to having a pure black. Actually, we do already see the little speckles of blue now that I've turned the J key on. So I'm just going to again, do maybe like a 0 or 0 by default, a +2 right around there. I do like this framing as well, and I like their positioning here. Maybe, and this is one of those things where if you are in charge of this picture, I would have had them step just a little bit left. And if you're in charge of this picture, have them step a little bit left, and then you step left as well, to kind of hide that person back behind this more bushy area. I really, very often I'm looking through that viewfinder for other bits of distracting information or scenes, and I am adjusting my position to hide it. So, and then, you know, I might, let's try this as well. Let's bring in a gradient here at the bottom. Oh, it's stuck on warming, so warm it up a little bit because I like that too in here. Warm up the shade, and I'm just going to bring up the exposure in this foreground just to balance it out a little bit more evenly, and maybe grab the brush within the gradient and brush up the tree a little bit. This is my flow's too high now. Oops. But you know, just kind of bring the detail in these branches out. Just a little bit of information there. Otherwise, maybe over here a little bit. Was it that? Oh, it was over. I should do shadows too. Shadows. Well, there we go. So we really got some nice detail from the trees in there as well. And again, raw, I go back to my brush and get the highlights and bring them down in that background. And with that brush, I would lower your clarity and probably just lower clarity. Let that stuff kind of re-emphasize its softness and out of focusness back there. And I'm being pretty sloppy with that brush, but with auto mask turned on, it shouldn't be grabbing too much of the foreground. And even if it is, the foreground is kind of, that's not that, I'm sorry, it's not foreground, but this bush is way closer to us than that stuff is off there, but it's okay for it to be a little bit out of focus as well. Yeah, I like that. And I find myself a lot more these days, you know, adding a little vignette. So it just kind of helps circle this, adds a little bit of the shadow back in that we would naturally get in the foreground. And I think overall, I'm pretty happy with that. Might just still really kind of paint in here. You can zoom in, remember, to really be a little bit more precise and really try to de-emphasize that background back there in that bright area. And see if you can hide these people with, it's tricky with that person intersecting that bush so much there. And, you know, I said very flippantly, oh, just hide them behind the bush. This bush isn't a very good bush to hide behind. If you were playing hide and seek and you hid behind this bush, you would lose very quickly. So that's a little tricky back there. I don't think I would think of it at the time, but maybe even shoot them out here in the open more where it would be very easy to clone stamp them out. But with a little bit of work in Photoshop or Lightroom, you should be able to hide those people there. Okay, and these people didn't know you were taking the shot. So it's good. It's good. Nice. All right. Jamie, did you get a shot? I saw you in the group. Let's see if we synchronize this folder real quick. Is your shot in there? It's usually good to have them in here at least an hour before, because I usually grab them about that time. Let's say, oh, it says there's 2 new photos. So let's synchronize real quick and see if we can get a new one in here. We got one of the baby bears, one of the young bears from Animals of Montana. There it is. Okay. Well, this is a very nice shot. Focus is great. Up here it is in its whole quality. I do wish we could see a little bit of that nose. I wonder, is there anybody who didn't know it was a bear right away? Because we're missing the nose and we're missing the ears. I mean, I think most people are going to know it's a bear, but I would like to see a shot where we'd have one or those other in play. Otherwise, I think this is really nice. This is the raw image straight out of your camera. Doesn't need much. I would, again, come here. I'd brighten it a little bit, just a little. Add a little contrast. Hit the J key and see. We've got pure black. Do we have any pure white? Not yet. So I'll come down to the highlights. I'll raise those a little bit more, and I can see a little bit on his claws creeping in and a little bit on his eye. So that's perfect right there. Shadows, I might bring up a little bit, kind of get a little bit more detail down in that shadowy area there. That darker black hole area just kind of grabs our attention, and we don't want that. The whites, where I don't know, leave them alone or put them up a tiny bit. Blacks, again, if we hit J, there they are. We could raise that so we get a little bit more detail out of there. Well, and see, he starts to lose a little bit of his contrast in his face, but I like that it's not a black hole under his paw. Always add a little bit of clarity. I usually add 5 or 10 vibrance, and saturation. I think we're pretty good where we are. Now, one thing that I do after I come through these is I usually come back up and say, do I need to adjust my white balance at all? This was closer to midday, if I remember shooting, or late morning. And this light is starting to get a little less flattering, in my opinion. I'm just going to warm it up a little bit. And I think bear fur is going to respond nicely to being warmed up. It's going to kind of counteract that blue or take some of that blue away and give us what I think is a little bit of a warmer image. Maybe I overdid it a little bit, but right there. And I see Roy in the chat suggesting an even tighter crop. I think I like that idea, Roy, because as we don't have the ears already, let's bring it in, make a really tight shot of eyes and claws here. And we still got good focus. You nailed focus on the eye, so that's all good there in focus. And I think that's great. And one thing that crop avoids doing is that kind of angle up here, that open space in the corner grabbed my eye along with the intersection of that tree back there. So having a tight crop like that makes it a stronger image. All right, nice job, Jamie. Ooh, and you submitted another one. I put an image like this up on Instagram, and up until my recent star one, it was one of my most liked images. This is a nice one as well. All right, who knows the first thing I'm going to do with this? I think a nice 16:9 crop is good here, because we have very little interesting stuff going on in the sky. It just kind of goes on and on and on. You know what? Let's go to 21:9. And let's crop in here and get across to here. I don't want to take, say the mountains kind of peter out on the right, so it doesn't really matter if we miss those. Let's get over there just like that. And we've kind of just made ourselves a panorama. And that's pretty nice. Now, the next thing that I'd like to do is get just a little bit more detail out of those mountains. We could brush something on, but I'm lazy a lot of times. So I'm going to grab the radial gradient tool. I'm going to put it on clarity, and I'm just going to draw a radial gradient right here and stick it over these mountains. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to invert it. So clarity is now applying to the mountains. If I hit the O key, I can see where my gradient is, effect is being applied inside or outside for radial gradients. I'm going to add a little bit of dehaze. I am going to bring exposure down a tiny bit. And I'm going to bring the blacks down a little bit as well. I think that's really going to kind of crisp and contrast. The mountains are going to get darker, and maybe bring the whites up. Let's hit the J key. And none of those whites are clipping yet. So I'm going to, that's snow. So I'm going to keep bringing it to the right. I don't want to go too far because careful, this is a radial gradient. We might end up seeing an edge of it. Oh, there's the red showing up at 40-ish something. So I'm going to back it off a little bit. Somewhere right around there. And I think that looks good. I might back the blacks off from what I did to bring some of that detail out in the trees there. Now, Joe is saying, let's close this, that he thinks those shadows in the foreground could add some nice leading. I agree. I like those shadows down there too. The problem is if we bring this down much, so if we take this aspect ratio off and bring this down, we end up hitting a shore corner over there. So, you know, it keeps doing that. Fit. Here we go. Here's our complete image. Jamie, if you could do some Photoshop fill and replace right here that was just kind of shadow, I do like what Joe is saying. But just, you know, really all I did was crop in, put that radial gradient over that area to give it more detail, and I think it looks pretty good. All right, look at that. What a great deal. What am I doing now? Let's stop sharing, come back to me, and where can I see myself? Right here. Do I still look cute? My nose gets red, and the warmth of my ears red. Oh, well. Thank you all so much for hanging out. Roy says he'd try some dehaze too. Yeah, a little dehaze would be nice as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on your Wednesday afternoon, evening, Thursday morning, Friday. I was going to make up a day of the week, but I couldn't think of one fast enough. When you watch this show, I appreciate it. I appreciate your support. Welcome to a few new Patreons that we picked up this week. I hope you take the time to watch the show all the way to the very end. Probably not. You're probably like, what is this guy about? Refund button. But I do really appreciate your support, and the community we have built here is just fantastic. I love you all. Have a wonderful whatever day it is for you, or night or evening or morning or lunch or brunch or, you know, whatever. And I will see you again next week. Bye-bye. I got to hit the button without looking.